Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff. Welcome to Shop Class. A lot of us are stuck at home right now, and a lot of us are also trying to figure out how to help our kids do their schoolwork from home. This can be difficult, but it also presents a really cool opportunity to provide them some stuff that they don't normally get access to, like shop class. So in this case, I decided to set up a simple shop class with my own 4 kids so I can teach them some really basic stuff and help them build a project together. And I figured since we were doing it anyway, we may as well make some videos out of it and share it. Hopefully it will be useful to you. Today we're just going to start with a couple of little things and give you guys a chance to use the tools so that you can see how they work. Then later on in a future lesson, we're going to actually use those to build something together. There's some simple ground rules that we need to put in place if we're gonna have shop class. Anytime that you step into a shop with tools, there is danger. So we're gonna put some stuff in place to make sure that everybody is as safe as possible. One thing is that you always wear safety glasses. If you're already wearing glasses, in a lot of cases that will be okay. If you're working with really dangerous tools, you need very specific safety glasses that are not going to shatter. For the simple projects that we're working on, anything that you have around will work just fine. Some of the tools you might be using are going to be really loud, and it's a good idea to have hearing protection to protect your ears. These are really inexpensive and they completely cover your ears, so they keep out a lot of the really loud noises. Anytime you're working with really smelly stuff or a lot of sawdust, you want to protect your lungs. A face mask will help you do that. A couple more little things. If you've got long hair, you want to pin it back or put it up in a bun or in a hat, something so that it's not hanging down. You don't want it to get caught in a tool. That'd be really, really bad. You need to take off any jewelry that you have, anything that can hang down and get caught or cut. And you want to make sure that all of your clothes are not baggy. You don't want to have extra sleeves hanging out or hoods that are flopping over your shoulder, anything like that. Those are some things that you need to wear and keep around all the time that you're in the shop, but there's also some bigger rules that we need to put in place. In our house, our kids never, ever go into the shop without me or my wife. As they get older, that may change, but for now, their safety is the most important thing to me. Now let's talk about your behavior in the shop. This stuff is a lot of fun, but it also can be pretty serious. You always listen to the adult around you while you're in the shop, and if they tell you to stop doing something, you stop doing it right away. When you're in a shop with other people, everything that you do can affect the people around you. You may be doing something that's about to put somebody else in danger and you don't even realize it. So if a grown-up tells you to stop, stop right away. Turn off the tool, lay down the tool, stop, look at the grown-up, and listen for more instructions. This can be really, really important for keeping everybody safe. All right, with all the safety stuff out of the way, let's jump into some tools. So right now we're going to talk about saws. There's a bunch of different types of saws, and we're not really going to talk about any of the power saws yet, but instead saws that you just use with your hand. This is called a tooth saw. That seems pretty obvious because saws all have teeth across the bottom. These are just sharp little pieces that are used to cut the wood when you pull the saw back and forth. This is a really handy tool to have around because you can use it for lots and lots of stuff. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out about this is that all of these little teeth have a sharp edge on the front and the back on this particular saw. When you use this saw, you don't need to push down onto the material very much. Instead, you want to worry about pulling straight back and pushing straight forward. This is kind of like letting the saw do the work for you. You just work in this direction and it will cut down as it goes back and forth. Let's talk about a different kind of saw that you may see. This is called a flush cut saw. It has a really floppy blade, so it's not going to be good for cutting big stuff because it's going to want to bend. This is good for cutting very small stuff flush against another surface. This particular saw also has sharp faces on the front and the back, so you can pull and push, but since it's floppy, it's going to be kind of hard to push. This is also a flush cut saw, but this is called a pull saw, and that's because the teeth on this particular saw are only sharp on the back side. If you push this way, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to cut any wood. If you pull, that's when this one cuts. This one is called a hacksaw, and you'll notice that you probably can't even see the teeth on this video. The teeth are really, really small and they're really close together. Now this one is not very good for cutting wood, but it is really good for cutting metal. If you have a piece of metal that you need to cut or a screw that you need to cut off, you can pull this back and forth to cut through that metal. It's going to take a little while, but this is the best tool for that particular job. Now we're not going to talk a whole lot about power tools yet. But a lot of the power tools that are saws have spinning blades. They don't go back and forth. There is one, however, called a jigsaw. The cool thing about a jigsaw is that it has a small blade that goes out and back. So if you're holding the saw like this, like you're supposed to, it goes down and up. This mimics the same big saws that we talked about before, where you push and you pull. The cool thing about this saw is that it's really easy to use. You just pull the trigger up here, and the more you pull the trigger, the faster the blade is gonna go. This is really handy because if you pull the trigger just a little bit, you can cut really slowly. But if you pull it all the way up, it's gonna cut really fast, and you can cut a big long piece pretty quickly. One of the things that this is most useful for is cutting curves. That would be really difficult with our big tooth saw, but this has a really thin blade, so we can cut and turn the tool as we cut it. Now that you've gotten to try out the different saws a little bit, don't forget what they're called and what they're for, because we're gonna come back and have a quiz on those in a little bit. Next up, I wanna talk about something that is really handy and very simple to use. Clamps. Clamps are things that help you squeeze two pieces together, whether you want to hold them in place while glue dries, or you want to hold them together while you drive in a screw or a nail. This is called a quick clamp. It's quick because it has a little grip here. As you squeeze the grip, these two pieces get closer together and clamp the pieces in place. Now, one cool thing about this is that it has a quick release too. So you hold this quick release and you can slide that piece exactly where you want it. These are really, really handy. But there's also a whole bunch of other types of clamps. This is called an F clamp, and that's because it's shaped like an F.
Oh, yeah, that even smells like letter F.
You can put two pieces in here and squeeze them together, and then you twist this little handle, and that pushes them even closer together so that you can get them really, really tight. This type of clamp is called a spring clamp. Now you can't adjust this one. It has a spring in the middle, so as you squeeze these two ends, it separates these two ends. And when you let go, it clamps the pieces together. Like I mentioned, you can't change how tight this one is. It's all based on the spring that's on the inside. This is handy in a lot of different places though, even though you can't adjust it. Now clamps are useful to hold pieces together while the glue dries, like I mentioned, but it's also really handy when you're using a saw. Anytime that you're gonna be cutting a piece of wood, you're gonna be putting a lot of force against that wood, across it as you push and pull the saw. So clamping that piece of wood down to a table or something sturdy is going to make it a lot easier and safer for you to do the work with the saw. So let's try out some of these clamps on the pieces of wood, and then we can go back to the saws, use them a little bit, and then we're going to have a quiz. There you go. Yeah. So it cuts it, but it's a lot of work, right? Oh, keep it down in there. Pull it back, and then you just slightly lift it up a little bit. You take the pressure off of it, move it forward, lay it down. It's okay. You want to go faster so that it cuts. Wow! All right, everybody at home, it's quiz time. Are you ready? Question number 1. What is the most important piece of safety equipment that you should always have on anytime you're using tools? Safety glasses. These are really inexpensive. You should always have a pair around and always keep them on anytime you're working on a project. Question number 2, and this one's a true or false question. This is an F clamp. That's false. This is a spring clamp. Remember, it has a spring right in the middle of it that keeps it closed unless you force it open. It's easy to remember the F clamp because it's shaped like an F.
You have visual aid.
Another true and false. Question number 3. Of all the saws that we talked about, this is the best one for making curved cuts. That's false. Even though the blade is really thin, this part is thick, and that's going to make it super hard to make a curvy cut. Of the tools that we talked about, the better option for that is the jigsaw. This blade is really thin, and you can steer it while you're cutting. Can you control the speed of this saw? The answer is yes, you can. Remember that the trigger controls the speed. The further you pull the trigger in, the faster the saw is going to cut. Alright, that's all for the quiz. You did a great job, and I hope you learned something from this video. Thanks so much for joining us today on Shop Class. I hope you learned some new stuff about some tools that you didn't know before. Be sure to come back tomorrow as we learn about some more tools to get ready to build our first project. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.